Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista. Welcome to our weekly tropical weather outlook for the off season of the tropical world, at least for us here in the North Atlantic. It is December 8th, 2024. Not much to go over this week when it comes to weather, especially when it comes to the tropics, because obviously we're now in December. We're no longer in hurricane season. But let's start off anyways by seeing what's going on around the world. There's some things happening. Looks like the southwestern Indian Ocean is starting to become active. And I'm just going to show you to show that tropics is active around the world, even when we're not active here in the Atlantic and the Pacific, especially in the southern hemisphere. Right about now is when activity begins to pick up. And as you can see, there are actually areas of investigation. There is area Invest 92S, and then there is Invest 91S. I think models both show both of these systems developing into tropical systems in the southwestern Indian Ocean. I don't think they're any big threat to land as far as I'm concerned, but once again, just goes to show there is activity in the tropics globally, even if we don't have activity here in the Western Hemisphere, and we're probably not going to have activity in the Western Hemisphere for the next several months now that we're heading into the off season. Let's go now, though, to the kind of off season part of the discussion, and that is generally taking a look at sea surface temperature anomalies and monitoring conditions as we go throughout the off season. Two areas that we're going to watch closely, and I mentioned this in my 2024 hurricane season recap. The first area, the Atlantic, and as you can see in the Atlantic right now, we still remain very warm. The Caribbean Sea very warm, and the Gulf of Mexico as well, running well above average right now. This will probably cool down as we head into the winter months and we start getting these Arctic shots of air to come down into the United States. Of course, if we do get Arctic shots this winter, although we did actually just have one for the last week, especially in the east right now. And we're going to get one more before conditions actually begin to warm up. And we'll talk about that towards the end of the video. But once again, as we head towards the winter, these Arctic shots that come from the north as part of winter, they tend to cool down the Gulf of Mexico, although they haven't that much in recent years. We'll see if we have any major ones this year and we see any of these sea surface temperatures in the Gulf cool back down. But otherwise, things remain warm right now, and especially in the eastern Atlantic, we still have very warm sea surface temperature anomalies there. The second very important thing is, what about the Pacific? How does the Pacific look? And as you can see, generally cold. We have very cold sea surface temperatures off the northwestern Pacific and, of course, along the equatorial Pacific associated with our La Nina-ish. We were supposed to have a La Nina. It's a very complicated situation, but we were supposed to have a pretty potent La Nina this winter. Kind of failed to materialize, but we still have a cold ENSO in place, and it actually seems like maybe in the coming weeks we might see a little bit of a resurgence in La Nina, maybe one final effort to finally get us over the threshold before the winter and spring comes. But nonetheless, this is another area we'll be watching very closely throughout the winter. How cold does the Pacific stay? Does it stay cold, or do we see it warm up into El Nino territory? Those are some of the things we're going to be watching over the next several weeks and months as we head into next year. The latest anomalies, though, out of the Pacific, this is the latest weekly update from the CPC. We're definitely in cold ENSO, so there's no doubt about that. We're at negative 0.3 Celsius. We're La Nina threshold usually sits at negative 0.5, and we failed to reach that threshold, or at least consistently. We had some westerly wind bursts that happened over the last several weeks, especially last month in November, which kind of stifled the development of La Nina. But we're still in cold ENSO. And I will show you the SOI index, which is something else that we look at. This measures trade winds across the Pacific. The SOI has steadily increased, meaning that trade winds have strengthened in the Pacific, and atmospherically, we're beginning to respond more like a La Nina. The latest 30-day average of the SOI sitting at nearly 13 points. And the La Nina threshold for the SOI is generally considered at 7 points positive. So the 30-day average is definitely beginning to react like a La Nina. The 90-day average, though, is still kind of lagging behind at just under 5 points. And you can take a look at the daily contributions. You could see how we definitely jumped up in the SOI the last several days, consistently point days coming out with points in the positive 21, 17, 24. So very strong positive contributions, daily contributions to the SOI. So that definitely means things are beginning to respond a little bit more like a La Nina. And you can even see here with the 850 millibar zonal winds, this is a measure of the zonal winds along the equatorial regions of the world. And you could see right around 180 degrees, this is in the Pacific right here, a bunch of these blues and a lot of these pinks coming in, representing strengthening of the trade winds in the Pacific, once again in line more with La Nina. And you could see this is the forecast from now, which is December 8th. So today, going into the future, you could see we see a lot more of these blues and purples and even these pinks beginning to show up, which represent strengthening of the trade winds in the Pacific. So once again, could we be seeing a resurgence of La Nina as kind of a last effort to get us to La Nina threshold as we head into the winter? I guess that might be happening. And as of right now, the Climate Prediction Center, at least as of their November update, still waiting for the December update. They still have La Nina chances pretty high, although definitely not as high as earlier this year. As once again, I remember earlier this year we were expecting a pretty potent La Nina, or that's at least what all the climate models had, and I think the Climate Prediction Center probabilities were all the way up in the 90s, although I have to check that and see if that's actually true. But we still have at least a good solid shot of heading into La Nina, even if it's not strong. And I guess that chance remains with us as we head into the winter before things kind of drop off as we head into the late winter and into the spring. So I guess there's still a little bit of time for La Nina to happen. And that'll be the big thing because depending on if we go to La Nina or not will really kind of shape things into how the ENSO playing field is for next year, which will obviously be a big implications for hurricane season by the time we get to the spring of next year. So lots of things to be watching over the next several months, or not a lot. There's kind of one or two main factors that we really need to pay attention to, but that it'll definitely get interesting, not only for hurricane season, but how this impacts the winter season here in the United States and of course across North America as well. And that's actually the second part of what I want to talk about today. How are things looking in terms of the United States weather, since obviously it's not hurricane season, so there's not much to talk about with that. Generally quiet across the country today, although there is some winter weather advisories in effect for the northern Midwest, some blizzard warnings in effect for some of the northeastern mountains of Montana. A weather system that's kind of skirting its way across southern Canada. Looks like we will see more wintry conditions across portions of the Midwest. There's actually as well some winter storm warning in effect for northern Minnesota too. And then as we head towards next week, looks like we might have another significant system make its way up the East Coast. Will probably bring some rain along the coast, but inland, especially along the Great Lakes, they're looking at more snow. Especially if you're tired of the snow and are not happy about the winter weather that we've been seeing a lot of over the last week or so. Bad news for you, there's more of it coming. So let's take a look at the GFS, and you can see over the next 24 hours, the system kind of skirts its way around southern Canada. There's also a small shortwave trough that moves throughout the southeast that brings rain to portions of the deep south and Tennessee. That system kind of moves into the northeast, so you can get some rain maybe in the mid-Atlantic and southern New England heading in from Monday to Tuesday. Interior portions along northern New York, Vermont, and maybe New Hampshire might get some more snow. That system then moves out And then this is the big system we're going to talk about heading into mid to latter part to the latter part of next week. Pretty powerful, or at least a pretty expansive low pressure develops along the East Coast, drives in a lot of cold air from the northwest, and as you can see, doesn't make, of course, because of the position of the low pressure, remains just inland. So along the coast, you'll probably get a lot of gusty wind and heavy rain once again. Unfortunately, for those along the coast, I know we're going to miss out on another chance for snow, which is unfortunate. But if you're inland, especially along the Great Lakes, looks like we might get some more lake effect snow in Michigan. And then for inland portions of Pennsylvania, New York, they're going to get another round of very heavy snow, and then that system moves upward into southeastern Canada, develops into a pretty potent low pressure system, deepens as low as 974 millibars, and then that becomes a very strong snowstorm, I would assume, for southeastern Canada as well, and of course dumping a lot of heavy snow into the interior portions of the Northeast and the Great Lakes once again. And then we get a very strong northwesterly flow behind that system. And when it comes to the temperatures, that, as you could see, results in one final cold snap for the Northeast before, by the time we get to the end of next week, and as we close out the week next week, or in this upcoming week, we start seeing a huge warm up occur across the Midwest and into the Northeast as well. And it kind of lasts throughout the entire United States. And you could actually take a look at the Climate Prediction Center outlook for the next week to 10 days. And things begin to warm up dramatically as the system moves out and we begin to see a ridge, the southeast ridge, build back in. So if you're not happy, especially with all of the cold weather and snowy weather we've been getting across the Northeast and the general eastern half of the United States, if you want the warmer weather, if you miss it, I have good news for you. It looks like it's going to be making a comeback as we head towards the end of next week. And then as we close out December, we generally stay in a warmer pattern. But if you like the snowier weather, especially like me, if you're along the mid-Atlantic coast and you were hoping for some snowy weather, unfortunately, as the case has been for the last several winters, we're not going to see much of it at all over the next several weeks. Although we'll see how things progress into January. Maybe the pattern might flip back to a more cold and suitable pattern for snow, or at least that's what some of the long range guidance hints at. But over the last several times we've got it, it doesn't really amount into much for the coast. But we'll see. Maybe this time things will be different, and it'll definitely come to how much of a La Nina pattern we see recharge. And could we actually finally get to La Nina threshold? That's also something we'll be watching over the next several weeks as we head full charged into winter. With that being said, though, not much else to go over today. Once again, it's the off season. We're going to do these off-season tropical weather outlooks and kind of also go over winter weather as well. And I'm actually thinking about going more in depth into winter weather, maybe doing more daily videos on winter weather and general United States weather over the next several months, as there will not be much to talk about in the tropics. So that's something that we'll maybe try to explore. Also for severe weather season as well. Why not? Kind of expand the repertoire a little bit beyond the tropics. Could be a good thing for us, but we'll see. But with that being said, not much else to go over when it comes to weather today. Gonna do these tropical weather outlooks when we talk about La Nina and ENSO and what to expect for hurricane season. Gonna do that on a weekly basis on Saturdays. I did it Sunday today because I wasn't really able, or I wasn't really up to it to do a video yesterday. Gonna be completely honest, why not? But look out for these weekly tropical weather outlook videos every Saturday, starting next Saturday, and then every Saturday after that till we get to hurricane season, when we return to daily tropical weather outlooks and tracking the tropics as we usually do. Till then, if you are interested, and if you're interested in these tropical weather outlook videos and you look forward to seeing them every week, I encourage you, like the video, share with your family and friends, and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can get a notification whenever I post a video every single week, or whenever I post a video on other stuff as well. With that being said, stay safe, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Peace, love, and kindness to you, and we will talk again very soon.